Welcome to Frances Reads Her Bible with me, Frances Okeke. Today I'm moving on to Genesis chapter 16. In Genesis chapter 15, which was the last chapter before this, Abraham had a covenant with God, like God had redone his covenant with Abraham. So now, Sarai, who was Abraham's wife, still had no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. Remember, she was a queen in Egypt. She was married to the Egyptian king of Egypt at the time when Abraham had lied that Sarai was his sister and the king married her. So this was his slave from then, her maid servant. So in verse 2, Sarai said to Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." And Abraham agreed to what Sarai said. I don't know how long it was between chapter 15 and chapter 16. Maybe it was a year, months later, 2 years later. I have no idea. And God had told Abraham, "You're going to have descendants, and Sarah is going to get pregnant and all that." And Abraham had believed, but now he was having crisis of faith, doubt, like, okay, maybe I can have this descendants. It's not supposed to be true Sarai, maybe to be true this other woman. So yeah, I agreed, like, okay, yeah, maybe God is doing this. Who knows what his thought process was at the time? I can only what's the word? Assume. But one thing to note is that it's been 10 years since God told Abraham to leave the land of Haran to the land of Canaan, which is what is in verse 3. So after Abraham had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife or concubine. This was 10 years since God made him the promise that was going to have descendants and children. Imagine God telling you you're going to be this and going to be that, and it's been 10 years. We can't really blame Abraham. It's been 10 years, and he's been waiting for 10 years. He's human. So in his mind, and God had told him repeatedly, even in chapter 15, you're going to have, God had told him he was going to have children through Sarai. Then he was 75, now he's 85, and his wife Sarah is 75. Okay, there's something from the Igbo tribe in Nigeria, in my place in Imo State. There's a tradition I noted. Okay, I have a great aunt who couldn't have children for her husband. She tried for years until she got into her 50s or 60s, 50s, I think. And then she married a wife for herself, in the sense that this wife is more like a representation of her, and the woman bore children, and the children belongs to my aunt, not to the woman. Like, so basically, the woman was like Hagar in a sense of she had children through the woman. The woman was like a surrogate just to bear the children, and the children belonged to my aunt. It was kind of weird. When I read this in the Bible, I kind of understood it, you know. The woman is not the husband's wife, but the wife's wife, my aunt's wife, not my aunt's husband's wife, not my uncle's wife. Right, my great aunt, anyways, because she's really old now, kind of a distant great aunt. So yeah, that part of Igbo tradition in my culture, in my part of Imo State, they have that women marry women to have children through them, and then if the husband is dead and they want to have children, they'll now marry this woman as their wife, and then she'll go out to sleep with whoever, and she gets pregnant. The children the woman bears now belongs to the woman who married her and the husband's family and the husband, even though he's late. Anyways, so in verse 4, Abraham slept with Hagar and she became pregnant. When Hagar found out that she was pregnant, she became proud and despised Sarai. Well, she's a woman, that kind of thing of, I'm now this man's, my child is going to be this man's first child. He's going to inherit everything I see. I'm no more a servant, that kind of pride. Like, who are you? You barren woman. You can't even have children. I'm the one going to give him his child, his only child, his first child, that kind of pride. So I'm sure when Sarah will say, go and do something, she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Who do you think you are? And then Sarai said to Abraham, it's your fault that Hagar despises me. I myself gave her to you, and ever since she found out she was pregnant, she has despised me. May the Lord judge which of us is right, you or me. I feel she's saying this to Abraham because, Abraham is human. Even though this Hagar is Sarai's maid servant, she's carrying his first child. I'm sure when Sarai will be like, Hagar, go and do this, Abraham will be like, oh, leave her alone now. She's pregnant. He'll be giving her special treatment, buying her special things, and not letting Sarai, treat her the way she used to. Because, come on, she's carrying his first child. This is a man that's looking for a child for years, and voila, that child is in that womb. So he's going to take care of the woman. So Sarai blamed him for for Hagar's recent behavior. Because like I said, I'm sure he was giving her preferential, treatment. And this was, out of excitement. After years of looking for a child, finally, you whatever she wants to eat, he'll give her. Whatever she wants to do, he'll do. So yeah, we can't blame him really. So that's what happened, and Hagar was feeling special. So Abraham now answered her in verse 6. Very well, I accept it was my fault, but she's your slave and she's under your control. So I agree, do whatever he wants with her. Because he loves his wife and he didn't want any issues. Then Sarai treated Hagar so cruelly that she ran away. Well, only God knows what Hagar did, how she must have treated Sarai then before Sarai now turned on her and, treated her badly. Like, so you think, am I still my maid servant? Even though you're carrying my child, you're still my maid servant. And then Hagar ran away. Then the angel of the Lord met Hagar at a spring. She was still pregnant in the desert on the road to Shur, Shur, and said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? And she answered, I am running away from my mistress. Well, Hagar, it was your fault. You forgot your place. And you were there for a reason. Even it's not even a matter of place. There's how you treat people. I'm sure she must have been calling Sarai, you barren woman. Can't you see I'm carrying his first child? Da, 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 da. Women can be saucy and all that. So yes. So in verse 9, the angel said to her, go back to her and be her slave. Then he said in 10, I will give you so many descendants that no one will be able to count them. You're going to have a son and you name him Ishmael because the Lord has heard your cry of distress. Ishmael, or Ishmael as people call it, means God hears. God heard our cry of distress. That's a very nice name though. God hears. But your son will live like a wild donkey. He will be against everyone and everyone will be against him. He will live apart from all his relatives. Yeah, that's how their descendants are. And people that came through the religion from Ishmael. Well, this is where God honors covenants. God is a keeper of covenants. And he told Abraham, your descendants. So to God, it didn't matter that he didn't get angry, he didn't cause the child to say, yeah, yeah, yeah. This is still Abraham's descendants, and that covenant covered Ishmael or Ishmael. So he was going to have lots of children, descendants that no one will be able to count them because that was the same promise God had made to Abraham. So this was a descendant of Abraham. This was the first child of Abraham. So that covenant with God covered him. It didn't matter that he disobeyed God, but unfortunately, years later, these descendants of Ishmael became the thorn in the flesh of Isaac's descendants. You know, if only Abraham had patience. I think this applies to many of us. Well, we'll see that down the line. So Hagar asked herself, have I really seen God and lived to tell about it? So she called the Lord who had spoken to her a God who sees. God said, send this message through his angel, a God who sees. That is why people call the well between Kadesh and Bered, the well of the living one who sees me. Very interesting. Like, she had an encounter with God. I wish I would have an encounter. She'd had an encounter, like an encounter with an angel who brought her a message from God. Like, wow. And gave her a prophecy about the child she was carrying in her womb to give her hope so she could go back and be a slave to Sarai. So she went back, you know. I can't imagine how she must have felt to have seen an angel, to see God with her two eyes. Whew. Well, color me envy or color me green. So Hagar bore Abraham a son and he named him Ishmael or Ishmael. And Abraham was 86 years old at the time. 86, meaning this was 11 years after the covenant, the first covenant God made with Abraham, that he was going to have lots of descendants and all that. But that's the thing. If Abraham had not listened to Sarai, he wouldn't have had doubts over his covenants because God kept reminding him of his covenants with him. And God had to remind him again in chapter 15 that he was going to bless him, give him children, and Sarai was going to be pregnant, you know. And this was just in chapter 15. And now in chapter 16, he went out to sleep with another woman. He was impatient because he believed or he listened to the voices. Abraham listened to the voices around him, and the voice around him at the time was his wife, Sarai. And he disobeyed God. He broke he forgot the covenants and the promises that God had made him. He lived in doubt, in fear, in anxiety, and in worry. If he hadn't listened to Sarai and he hadn't keyed into, I'm not blaming Sarai, I'm just saying sometimes when God makes you a promise, it's so easy to let the voices of the people around you or the devil, because remember we hear so many voices, put you into doubt, amplify your doubts, which was what Sarai did. She amplified Abraham's doubts for him, because this was just chapter 15. He made a covenant with God. And now in 16, he is breaking it, forgetting what God promised him, forgetting what God had promised him. And Sarai knew about this covenant because she said that God had made her not able to have a child. That it was God's fault she didn't have, even though he had made that covenant with them. So when God makes you a promise or gives you a word of prophecy, the people you listen to, people you tell it to, can either drag you out of it or increase your faith to stand in that word of prophecy or covenant you've made with God. So it's very important the people you listen to, the voices around you, and the people you tell the promises God have made to you. That's what I've learned from this chapter. So another thing I've learned is when God makes you a promise or a covenant or gives you a word, a prophecy about something he's going to do in your life, most of us expect it to happen immediately, like in the next 1 year. Gang gang, like pew, it will just happen. Well, sometimes prophecy, a word given to you, can take years. See the case of Abraham. This is 11 years now. It takes time. So there's like a waiting period for the sometimes be like a waiting period for the prophecy or that word to manifest. And then many of us get impatient and tired and start assuming, oh, this is what God means. So I'll see you tomorrow. Stay blessed. God bless you. Don't forget to subscribe, follow. See you tomorrow. Bye.